We have been preaching something on this channel that's really important, and that's patience. Billy Napier deserves it. And you might be a little surprised that UF's biggest rival basically just came out and said exactly the same thing. Kirby Smart came out with a ringing endorsement for a youngster on UF's roster. But before we get to that clip, which we'll definitely play it, listen to what Billy Napier had to say about where this program and the roster is at.
I mean, I think every single part of what we do matters. The evaluation of players matters. The recruitment of players matter. Ultimately, you need continuity in system. You need to develop players. This is developmental game. You know, you need players in your system for multiple years. I do think that, ultimately a set of intangibles, a set of values that I think resonate with the players, that they play with effort, they play with toughness, they play with discipline. It all matters. I mean, and they're a good example of that. I think this is the 8th year for Kirby. And look, I mean, we've got work to do to chase them down. I mean, there's no denying that, right? So, and we're in the middle of that process, in the middle of that journey, So it causes you to respect all parts of, building a football team.
Okay, so he was asked about how Georgia was the gold standard. And what he mentioned was recruiting and development and coaching, and how all of those things are pieces to the puzzle to make a program like Georgia as successful as it is. He also mentioned that this is year 8 for Kirby. So obviously he has been building for a long time. Obviously, the contrast there with Napier in year 2 of a total rebuild. He needs to continue to get his own guys in. He really needs to get his guys developed. And he just said in this clip, he admitted to it, they have work to do to chase Georgia down. Billy knows that. He knows what it takes to get to where he wants to go. He knows that Georgia essentially gave a blueprint, right? They are the gold standard at the moment. And he admitted that we are not close at the moment. Here's another clip where Napier did something that 2 other coaches struggled to do this week. Watch it, and then we're going to talk about it.
Yeah, no, that's what I'm kind of describing here. I think ultimately we all can agree in this room you're some of the best at what you do, and I think ultimately you have experience. Experience got you here. And I think that's important for our staff, but it's invaluable for young players, I think that I'm hopeful that they'll take what they learned today and go back to work. I think that our team will do that. I've got a ton of confidence. They know we care about them. This group will get up and go back to work.
So did you notice how he sort of implied that UF needs to improve from a talent perspective without actually throwing his team under the bus? Pat Narduzzi at Pittsburgh this week said, as a football coach, you lose a lot of good players from a year ago, and you think as a coach, you're going to be able to replace them. And obviously, we haven't. He did walk some of those comments back later on and tried to kind of shoulder more of the blame on himself. But guys, he still said it. And Deion Sanders called out his offensive line for their bad performance and basically said they needed a whole new O-line and that's what he was going to focus on, that he was going to bring in new O-linemen because that's what Colorado needs to be successful. But Napier is essentially saying something very similar here. But he's not saying he needs new players. He knows the guys on the roster need to be developed. He also very much knows that he does, in fact, need more talent on this roster. And that talent is certainly on the way. Florida has a top 3 recruiting class in the 2024 cycle. They're looking to add a couple of more guys. There is help on the way. But I appreciate how calculated Coach Napier is here. He's not willing to say we're just not talented enough. when losing to a better team, even though we all know that Georgia has more talent on their roster than Florida has right now. But I love that decision on his part to not just come out and say that. He needs the guys in the locker room to believe in him. He needs this team to continue to fight for him. He needs his coaches to continue to develop this talent. So yes, the recipe for a national champion is multiple top 3 recruiting classes in a row that build on each other. That is how you win. That is where the top talent is found. And Florida's not there. But I really do appreciate that we don't have a coach who's willing to just say like, hey, listen, we got to throw these guys out with the bathwater and get a whole new crop of guys in, and then maybe we'll win. It's not me. And there are some coaches that say things similar to that. Speaking of Georgia, Kirby Smart had some thoughts about the youth on UF's roster as well. And I wanted to talk about that in just a second. But first, I want to give some love to Meldon Law. We've been talking about them all season long, but as a reminder, they serve the local communities of Gainesville, Ocala, Fort Lauderdale, and Lake City. And God forbid you are hurt or injured in an accident, please give them a call. They're the official injury firm of the Florida Gators, and they should be your official injury firm as well. I'll be out at their tent for FanFest before we take on Arkansas, so make sure you come out and say hi. Okay, so listen to what Kirby Smart had to say after this weekend's game.
Give them credit. They threw the ball to a really good playmaker. We talked all week about Wilson in 3. He's a really good player, and they did a great job utilizing his skill set. And we didn't do a great job stopping it. But it wasn't like there was a panic mode. It was, can we control the run game? If we can control the run game, we'll eventually slow
So he brought up Wilson, not Pearsall, not Etienne, not Mertz. He brought up a young guy stepping up and making plays. The great Kirby Smart even admitted that he didn't do a good job stopping him. That's a Billy guy. That's a young guy who Kirby mentioned in the first 3 minutes of his post-game press conference where they beat the pants off of Florida. And that goes to prove the point. You can't want what Georgia is without building like Georgia built. Is it going to translate to wins and losses the same way or just as quickly? There are way too many factors at play for me to say that. This isn't to say that UF doesn't need to improve in a lot of areas, because they do. We talk about it on this channel all the time. We don't just point out the positives. We make sure to tell you where growth needs to happen. And Billy thinks that too. He himself said that they need to improve in a lot of areas. Honestly, he tells us that weekly at his press conferences. Florida has to get better. But in all honesty, I think he's doing a pretty good job considering what he's got right now. The best players on this current Florida roster are his. The guys making the biggest impact on the field are his. What's this team going to look like over the next few games? I don't know. I don't even know what we're going to look like next season either. We've got the toughest schedule of all time. But I do know it's being built the right way. And I'm confident that we have the right guy building it. Billy Napier came in his initial press conference and he said, we are going to build this thing the right way, and it is going to take time. Please be patient with me. Please allow me to get the right building blocks in place, and we are going to build a championship caliber program. Guys, we are almost through season 2. We need to be patient. We need to allow him to build. If you believe that Dan Mullen needed to be fired because Dan Mullen was not a good CEO and Dan Mullen was not a good recruiter, then you need to not fire Napier because you don't like the kind of offensive coordinator he is, right? We hired Billy Napier because he is a good CEO and because he is a good recruiter, but those things take time. Building a brand new culture takes time. This team, this program is headed in the right direction. And you don't need any more evidence than just watching the continued fight against Georgia when the scoreboard said we were going to lose, when they were outmanned, when they had less talent. This team continued to fight with Billy Napier because they are fully bought in. And we as fans need to give him time to see his vision through. We cannot want a previous coach fired because he's not a good recruiter and he doesn't have a good culture and he's not a good CEO, but then not allow the guy we hire to fix all of that to have the time necessary to complete the fixing. And I think that Billy Napier is the guy. Progress isn't linear. We say this every single week on the channel. But even after a loss to Georgia, things are trending in the right direction. Florida just needs to be patient. This is probably the most important week of the year for Billy Napier and this program. I'm looking forward to talking to you guys about this more this week. Big game, Florida, Arkansas, noon in the Swamp. Florida wins this, they are bowl eligible. Make sure that you are locked in with the channel. And if you're not subscribed, fix that right now by clicking right here. Go Gators!